Welcome, everyone, to the Information's TITV. My name is Akash Pasricha. It is Monday, January 5th. Happy New Year to you. Hope you had a great holiday. We have got a great show to kick off the new year. First up, we are talking CES. The Consumer Electronics Show opens today in Las Vegas. We'll also discuss what Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang is likely to focus on. We'll then dig into AI adoption with an expert who helps companies navigate which AI tools to buy and how much they should actually pay for them. Next up, we've got friend of the show and Slow Ventures General Partner Sam Lessin joining us to share his predictions for 2026. And we will wrap with a look at ChatGPT's user base and where OpenAI needs to expand as it looks to achieve its ambitious revenue goals. It is a big show, and so let's get right on into things. CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, kicks off today, and NVIDIA's Jensen Huang will be there. One of his big focuses will be showing how NVIDIA's chips and software can be used in manufacturing and robotics. My colleague Wayne Ma published an inside look at that product line and why Jensen has been frustrated with its growth lately. I want to bring on Wayne to talk all about his reporting. Wayne, welcome back to the show. Happy New Year.
Thanks for having me, Akash. Happy New Year to you as well.
So CES, I've never been to CES. You've been a couple times?
Yeah, I was there last year.
Okay. And
And
for those of us who haven't been, I mean, tell us a little bit about the vibe. What are people talking about this year?
yeah, I mean, it's like kind of like the annual pilgrimage of consumer electronics companies. But the last few years, it's evolved into like more than just gadgets, like your phone, but automated cars, robotics, AR, VR, and now of course AI. And
And
so
so, and the products here, I mean, I always seem to think about what comes out of CES. These products, I mean, like in some cases, they're still like years away, right? I mean, it's never the stuff that is actually scaling now, or I mean, what do they end up revealing?
it's really mixed, right? Like some of it can be vaporware, people announcing gadgets that they claim will come out in a year or two's time, but then they never come out. Other things are, coming out soon. So I guess it's kind of like a mixed bag.
And from all the years you've gone, do you remember, like, do you have a particular memory from CES that that comes to mind as like, oh my God, that was so CES?
Oh, I mean, I think the parties, there's all these like lavish parties, like Instagram hosts a party, TikTok hosts a party. Basically it's like there's like lots of marketing basically and companies trying to like get on your good side. TikTok definitely trying to push that they're not like a Chinese company, for example. So yeah, there's just I remember a lot of the parties.
Right. Okay. Well, okay, let's talk about what's happening on the ground this year. I mean, you had this story out today about NVIDIA's push to get uh, companies who are focused on manufacturing to adopt not just their chips, but also their software. Talk a little bit about this business line and why this is such a big focus for NVIDIA, and then we'll talk about how it's going in a second.
Sure. I mean, obviously, NVIDIA makes billions of dollars selling chips for training and also chips for inference. So you could think of it as like a computer for a robot. A robot needs a computer to train its mind. People are buying chips for that. A robot needs a computer to run in itself. NVIDIA sells the chips for that as well. But to simulate the robot in an environment and collect data on that, to train the robots like movements and things like that requires like another computer, and people don't seem to be buying that type of computer or buying NVIDIA chips for that. And Jensen Huang has long believed that that's like the third pillar of their business, where they could also make billions of dollars, but it's just not happening.
And so you talked about this idea of a digital twin in the story. So help me understand what exactly this simulation looks like and what it's emulating.
Yeah, so a digital twin is kind of like, say, you were simulating a robot. You build the robot in a digital world. You build the digital world itself, and then you would like run the robot in that world and collect data on it to kind of help improve like how it moves and how it thinks. And so it's essentially like a digital version of the physical object that you are trying to make or build.
So it's like putting like a digital version of the robot or the machine in sort of a like a metaverse like reality to emulate what could happen essentially.
Right, right. And so NVIDIA has been pushing tools to not just build these like 3D objects, but also to simulate them. And so, and Jensen believes that everyone in the world will need a digital twin, including yourself. You'll need your own, and of course, you'll need to buy an NVIDIA chip to run that digital twin. So everyone will have their own GPU, their own digital twin. That's like his vision for the future. That's his long-term vision. So he's been working toward that. And so they announced Omniverse, this kind of division or product in like 2021. You can like download the software for your computer and run it on NVIDIA chip on your computer, but you can also lease, or buy and rent, thousands of NVIDIA GPUs in the cloud. And so my story basically kind of talks about how people aren't doing the latter, right? They're not using large scale simulation in the cloud.
Why not?
I guess like there's a lot of reasons. One is internally there's issues. The company itself has had trouble executing, building software for that division. They've built lots of flashy demos over the years that they've shown to Jensen to try to impress him. But starting around late 2023, early 2024, Jensen was starting to get frustrated because he saw these great demos, but none of them actually turned into real products. And he felt that engineering time was being wasted on these demos, that they should focus at least and pick at least one thing to actually ship and deliver. And they weren't doing that at the time.
Is there actually a market here for these products and tools, or is this really just NVIDIA looking for more ways to grow, do you think?
Well, Jensen believes, especially with the explosion in demand for AI, that there definitely is a market that eventually, if you're going to have lots of robots walking around or autonomous cars driving everywhere, that obviously you need to kind of simulate what they do. You can't just put them on the physical world. So that's the other way, right? You can just run them in the physical world and collect data for that. But that's
Right.
expensive, right? You have to build the product first. You have to run it in the real world, especially with autonomous driving. Cars, could hit people, things like that. So if you just run them in simulations like thousands of times, millions of times, and collect the data that way, it's safer and cheaper.
But who are the customers that have bought into this idea of using these simulations so far?
Well, lots of people do use simulations. It's just they don't use NVIDIA's products, right? So
Oh,
Tesla's simulating their cars, right, on the road, and Optimus, their robots, their humanoid robot as well. But they don't use NVIDIA's tools, right?
oh,
And they
so
may
so
not use
it,
NVIDIA's chips.
so it, and so it, in some cases it's actually that competitors' products actually work better for this stuff.
Yeah, or they build their own in-house because they don't feel like NVIDIA's solution is, right for them, right? So it's like very different than training and inference, where everybody uses NVIDIA's chips. NVIDIA is like the de facto standard for that, and nobody wants to use anyone else's stuff, right? And so I think that's the big struggle for this division and for this business.
And so as our reporter covering NVIDIA, you talk to everybody in this ecosystem. I mean, looking ahead a year or two out, do you see this being a major business line for NVIDIA, or do you think it's kind of just puttering along still?
I think 1 or 2 years out might still be too early. Maybe 5 years out, 10 years out, for sure. Again, like the market has to mature. We don't have like humanoid robots in our homes today like we do with a smartphone, right, in everybody's pocket. And so, like, I think it has to get to that point where everybody's buying like a humanoid robot or some robot for their home, and then of course that this market for simulation and 3D design tools will take off.
Right. All right. Well, there's a lot to look forward to in there. So I want to thank you for coming on, Wayne. That is Wayne Ma, our NVIDIA reporter here at The Information.
And thanks for having me.
Okay. Our next guest has a ground view of how AI adoption at enterprises is looking on the ground. Adam Mansfield is practice lead at UpperEdge, which helps businesses negotiate big contracts with enterprise software companies like Salesforce and ServiceNow. I want to bring on Adam to help us understand the current state of play of software heading into the new year. Adam, welcome back to the show. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. It's good to be here, Kosh. Always a pleasure.
I was told by my team that this is the only day that I can say Happy New Year, given that it's January 5th, and then I'm not allowed to say it afterwards. So I'm milking it for everything that it's worth.
All right. Hey, I get it. I get it. I have similar restrictions at my company, so I understand.
Okay, so look, let's talk about enterprise software. We had a crazy year in 2025. We're going into the new year. I want to understand a little bit from you first. The three of the main companies that you help your clients negotiate deals with are Microsoft, ServiceNow, and Salesforce. And we've done a lot of reporting on all three of these companies. I want to understand from you how these three companies pitch their AI services differently in the market, and what that kind of tells us about just how overlapping some things are in some cases, or just how Wild West it is in terms of trying to get people to actually buy these products.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So there's a couple ways I would look at this. Number one, you have to think about these vendors, the vendors you just spoke to about Microsoft, Salesforce, and ServiceNow, right? So we start with Microsoft. Microsoft's foundational approach to the market is always the same. We are Microsoft. We already have a base of customers, so they come in with a one Microsoft approach, right? So we're investing, we're AI leaders. You should naturally come and follow us down this path. That's kind of the mindset. The problem is, and there's a lot of reporting out here on this, not just from my own insights. They haven't been able to scale that as much. Okay, so what they've started to do, and this is interesting, they've started to kind of transition a little bit away from kind of a headcount base. So Copilot, which is an add-on to your Microsoft 365 subscription. Copilot, $30 per user per month. It's their list price. They're having a little bit of stalling on the acceleration. Now, though, there's other consumption-based products that they've been pushing. Okay, so things like Copilot Studio. That's not headcount based. That is how to build agents outside of Microsoft 365 that essentially is based upon a number of messages. So $200 per month for 25,000 Copilot. And that's how this runs. So they've started to create that flywheel effect that you typically see in AI vendors. The flywheel effect becomes really important because that is how the market's looking at things to accelerate revenue growth tied to AI. So
Right.
Microsoft is starting to transition there with that. Okay. I would also say, and this is a really big one, Microsoft 365 E5, which is a foundational suite of products that they've also been trying to push onto the market. Haven't really gotten to where they wanted to go. They have now included something called Security Copilot as part of E5. Now, part of that's to justify the July 1st price increases that are coming. But the thing that's really, really interesting here is somewhat of a hybrid. So you still have the Microsoft 365 E5 SKU, which is headcount based, but within it, you now get a number of Security Copilot, which is the security.
So you get more in there essentially.
Exactly. But here's the hook, though, Akash. It's really important. Those SCUs, you only get so many. And if you blow through them, guess what? You owe them more money. So they're now in a hybrid, which becomes very problematic for customers.
But now, but this consumption-based pricing and usage-based pricing that you talk about here, I mean, this is uniform throughout for ServiceNow and maybe in Salesforce, right?
Exactly. So that's where I'm going. It's exactly. So Microsoft for the most part, led with Copilot, which is an add-on to the headcount base. And now they're starting to mix it a little bit. Salesforce, right out of the gate, consumption-based, flywheel-based, right? Which is Agentforce, as well as Data Cloud, which they always push together as one thing, okay? Agentforce originally was $2 per conversation. The market didn't like that. What's a conversation? I don't understand. So then they've transitioned to Flex credits. Well, Flex credits, you get a certain amount of credits driven by a number of actions. Again, what's an action? And I could go down that path, which I'm not going to do now, but that's all consumption-based, And that is really being driven when you talk about uniformity. Yes, it's to drive revenue, trying to do this in the market. Investors like that. But the other reason why you have to think about it is that these cloud vendors, they have accelerated cost profiles driven by the fact that their cost and structures with those underlying foundations are scaling based on real-time usage as well. So to maintain their margins, they have to sell products that are consumption-based because that's the pain that they're feeling to their cost profiles.
So let me ask you a question about then consumption-based pricing and the impact that it has structurally on enterprise software. And you've been on the show before, and we've talked about this idea that, well, if the number of seats go down, how do you make up for it? And consumption-based pricing might be the answer to that. But one of the questions I have for you, Adam, is, with seat-based pricing, I mean, there was this whole idea that, hey, I just want to pay for the one vendor and I just want the one seat, and I'm not interested in going to all these different vendors. Just give me an all-in-one sort of platform. And now, in a world where it's, well, I'm only paying for what I use, I'm sort of torn on whether or not there will be a fragmentation of services because people won't really need this all-in-one platform, or are all these products overlapping, and what's the point of fragmentation when there's going to be consolidation anyway?
Yeah, so there's a lot here. I was told I only have so much time, so I'm gonna keep myself honest in this.
No.
Here's the answer. In its simplest form, I believe it's still going to be very much a mix and a problematic mix for customers. And where I'm going with this is you're going to have some AI products that are going to be still headcount or hybrid, like ServiceNow you mentioned before, Pro Plus, that add-on to get the number of assists. You still have a unit, and then there's a number of assists, very much like I just talked about with E5. The big thing that's going to happen is these organizations are going to have to create, and when I say organizations, the customers, they're going to have to create governance models just literally on how we are tracking our actual usage at the seat level, like Bob in accounting or Sally in marketing. They need to be accountable for what they're using, because think about it. When the consumption happens, it's not just one thing that Sally's using. Sally has 15 different applications, all different types of meters, and they have to all be organized and then spit back at a corporate level and govern, because those invoices are going to come from those vendors, whether it's Microsoft, Salesforce, ServiceNow, SAP, Oracle, all of them, right? So I don't think it's going to create an environment where, oh, it's so much easier now. I actually think you're going to have dashboards. You're going to have governance teams, quarterly meetings. There's going to be a whole host of things that are going to have to be put in place,
trying to track what is actually being used. And does it? I mean, from what you're seeing from your customers, is the product working?
I mean, all right. So here's what I would tell you. I would tell you that I think there's some momentum to, okay, I kind of see where this is going, seeing where it's going. Here's the problem, though. Seeing where something's going when you're cutting checks for millions of dollars for the thing that you're still wondering where it's going is a problem. The other thing I would tell you is that, is it working? Well, the first thing is we need to step back. How is it actually being used? This is the problem. The definitions of use. And you go back and say, well, are you using it? Someone doesn't even know what use is. Well, I don't know. I had 6 conversations. I had 5 actions. I don't understand what that is. So now you have this mix. So, and the fundamental question is it being used? I would say it's being used not to the level that was expected, number one. But number two, I don't think internally they've even figured out what use actually is, let alone ROI, productivity, all the things that the C-suite's expecting. And lastly, the problem is these vendors are still stuck in the mindset of push, push, push. Okay, I want X volume, you need Y number of actions, and they sell to this outer level to drive revenue. Here's the problem. When you challenge that vendor to say, how did you come up with that number? How did you come up with number of actions that you think I need? How did you come up with the number of credits? Dead faces. Maybe that's a bleak term to use, but the point is there's no way for them to actually define it because they're figuring it out too. So really, do I see use? I see testing. I see figuring out. I see willingness to explore. Am I sitting here with customers like, wow, I got this figured out. I love it. I see the ROI. Let's do more. That's far and few between.
So let me ask you one more question before you go. So now, with the customers you're talking with and representing in these deals, what do they want more of from these companies? I mean, the products are there, and they're being packaged every which way and priced a number of different ways. And like, what do they want more of?
Yeah. All right. So the first thing, honesty. They want them to come in and say, look, we ourselves are figuring this out. We ourselves are figuring out what the actual specific ROI productivity is going to be for your defined use cases for you. Lead with that. Honesty, work together, workshops, spend your time focused there. That's what customers want. Get over that hurdle, do the demos, see the value and say, okay, now let's talk honestly. Let's commit to this amount with full transparency, which is the second thing they want. I need full transparency. What's use? What's an action? What's a conversation? What's an assist? I want it all defined for my scenario as you understand it today, not generic PDF, PowerPoints that you send to everybody, or I can go to
Right.
your website. I don't want that. The third thing, cost certainty. That's obvious, but let me play this down for an extra tick. One, it's upfront. But two, I want you to tell me, what does the world look like when the flywheel actually spins? The thing you want, which I may want too, what is it going to cost me? What assurances, what volume structures, what credit structures, what type of commitments, protections are you going to give me? Fourth, last thing I just thought of, investments. They need investments. These vendors need to come in and say, look, I know there's going to be change management. I know it's going to take time. Let us invest. Let us give you resources. Let us give you funding as investments to make the thing real, working together.
Okay. And do you think we get that in 2026? Yes, no, maybe?
I think we're going to get closer to it. Do I think we're going to get all of that? No. Do I think that vendors are still going to hold the line because they're stuck in where Microsoft, where Salesforce, you should follow me where I go? I do. Here's the problem. In 2026, I do think there's going to be vendors that are going to come around, whether it's a Sierra for Agentforce competitors or others that are going to come in and they're going to start accelerating their own usage, which then gets them in creating their own moats. So do I think? Yes, I think there'll be more. I think you're going to see better behavior. Do I think they're going to solve it willingly out of the gate? No. And I think you have to know how to orchestrate those conversations way in advance, which also not, that's something that we do. But the point is, customers need to do this with or without the help. They need to make this their foundational approach to get behavior change. They have to force the behavior change, the customers, because the vendors are not going to do it. Because remember, these vendors we're talking about, they report to one group, the financial community, their investors. That's it. They can talk about customers and how much they care about the customers, which I'm not saying they don't, but at the end of the day, they're publicly traded. Let's just be honest. They need to drive revenue, period.
Right. Well, Adam, I want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate the time. That is Adam Mansfield, a practice leader at UpperEdge here on TITV.
Always a pleasure. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Okay. Our next guest is a friend of the show. Sam Lessin is a general partner at Slow Ventures. He is also the husband of Jessica Lessin, our editor-in-chief. Sam put out a pretty interesting set of predictions over the weekend over how he thinks 2026 is going to play out. It covered everything from degen culture to wealth creation to relationships and AI. I want to bring him on to talk all about it. Sam, welcome back to the show.
Always happy to be here. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Okay, so let's talk about this note you put on. Look, you talked about default depression. You talked about the challenges of wealth creation. You talked about gambling. It felt like 2026 is looking a little bleak. I don't know.
I was flying home for vacation, and I was trying to think about what this year is going to be like and what really matters thematically in business and culture and society. And look, I think here's the interesting thing. We live in a world ruled by narratives, especially now, especially given how they travel on the internet. And there's a lot of things going on which may or may not actually fully be true yet or really ever, but people believe them. And the fact that they believe them then drives their behavior, right? And so I think, a really good example of that is this narrative that AI is going to replace all the white collar jobs, right? Now, is there some shades of truth to it? Probably. Is it this year? Probably not. And yet it's going to color how people feel about their lives, how they behave, what they do. And so the question, from my perspective, when I was kind of exploring, is like, look, given the narratives that are happening right now in the world, how's this year going to feel?
Okay. So, and I'm curious, by the way, you put these notes out. Did you get any responses to this one? I mean, what do people say to you when you put out these notes?
I got many responses to it. It's through my newsletter, and it's one of those things we only hear from the people that agree with you. So the people that agree with me, and they're saying this seems pretty depressing, and how are you going to coach your kids, et cetera, et cetera. I don't have any great answers to that. But yeah, there are people definitely, I think the biggest big picture here is, again, thinking about this year as a year, which even aside from technical realities will be ruled by by feelings. We're in a feelings culture. We're in a feelings year. There's a lot that is, from a narrative perspective, could really end in lots of different places. Like, we don't know. We're kind of on a knife's edge in terms of how the year plays out. And so I think the sense is everyone kind of is thinking about how to react, in real time versus thinking long-term about what's actually going to happen.
Now, what about prediction markets? I mean, I assume that's what you were pointing to with your note here about gambling, and I think you were basically drawing the connection that Hey, it's really tough for young people to make money nowadays. Maybe that has something to do with all of the momentum and prediction markets. Is that the point that you were making?
Well, it's complicated, right? Like, look, I actually love prediction markets. I think prediction markets are awesome. I'm like a student of Hayek, right? In markets are information machines, and especially as traditional sources of news and trust and truth fall apart, the idea that the best predictor you have of what's actually going on in the world is going to be through a prediction market and media by a market. It's a great intellectual theory. It's great. I'm super pro, that direction. That said, there is also this dynamic that goes on, right, which is proximate to it. It's sports betting, it's prediction markets, to some degree it's crypto, it's certainly meme stocks, where, look, most young people have figured out that in a world of deep asymmetry, right, which is what you see in venture capital and some of these stories that rise like crazy, and in a world where houses are really expensive, careers are falling apart, all those things true, is that you basically need to put the money on black and be right to a very, very asymmetric way in order to get anywhere. You're not going to earn your way into a house, right? Is the kind of the now, is that actually true? This is kind of the part of the note. Yes and no. It's maybe not as dramatically true as people think it is, but it is culturally very accepted right now, and culturally it is the major narrative, and that's propelling a lot, right? And so I think that's the thing you have to think about is, again, people reacting to stories, and those stories being very powerful right now.
What do you think about this notion where we've done some reporting on insider trading and the possibility of it happening on these prediction markets? I mean, I think some people who are very bullish on these companies sort of being a little less regulated will say, well, this is, it's how we get more accurate information out, is by trading on it. I mean, that seems like it's a slippery slope. What do you make of that argument?
So look, it's an interesting thing from a pure perspective, right? Philosophical perspective. In some ways, the fact that information of these markets pump and kind of promote what's effectively inside information is, as you said, that's literally the point, right? Like the point of an information machine is that everyone's incentivized, right, to contribute their best information in order to profit off of it. Now, that doesn't jive very well with the concept of inside information, right? These are like almost philosophically incompatible systems. How are we going to resolve that as a society? I think that's TBD in a lot of ways. Like the question is who punishes who, what are the risks and rewards? But people are ultimately ruled by incentives, right? And I do think it's one of those things where when people who are pro prediction markets say, but insider trading, reality is they're just incompatible systems, and we have to resolve how we feel about them as a society.
Now, you talked a little bit about trust in content in your note, and you touched on it here as well. You obviously have the creator fund at Slow. How are you guys thinking about the creator economy this year, and what sorts of trends you're watching and what predictions you have?
Yeah, so look, I mean, in the creator economy, I think it's basically a continuation of last year. And what do we see? One, look, we all understand, and again, this is a narrative, but it's also true, right? That the institutional trust has the benefit of being true, which is institutional trust is extremely low, right? And so what does that mean? That means people trust individuals, they trust characters effectively. And why? Because they have incentive to not cheat. Like there's a whole bunch of reasons why trusting an individual versus a squirrely institution makes sense. Then there's a question of what institutions do you trust? And this is where it gets a little spicy, because I would argue that we're moving out even from a world of mass market creators to niche local creators and community creators that are like kind of the god of blank or whatever domain you're really excited about. So this is like my big prediction for the creator economy this year that I think relates to this question of trust and how people kind of who relate to each other is a lot of the mass market creators who are kind of known by everyone. They're famous, but they're not really deeply industry or expert domains in any one thing. They're not deeply trusted by a single community, become less relevant. Reach becomes less relevant. Algorithmic hacking becomes less relevant. And what becomes more relevant is deep authenticity and community leadership in a specific vertical. So kind of more cult leaders, less Mr. Beast.
So we're going back to this whole sort of micro influencer climate.
It's not micro. I mean, you can call it that, but really what it is it's deep, not broad, right? Which is you basically want, as trust erodes and as people look for communities in smaller pockets where they can have purpose and place and meaning in a specific area, the idea that you're just known by everyone is not that valuable. It's kind of like, everyone knows them, but no one really trusts them that deeply. What you really want is like your true believers. You need
Yeah.
like a core of audience that is like, this is the person that I choose to trust in life, and I have a reason for it. And like, I buy things from them and I believe what they say, etc. So I think what you're going to find is just kind of these communities becoming tighter, smaller, and in a lot of ways more valuable and durable.
Right.
And less based on algorithmic hacking and just pure distribution and shock jockery.
But I just want to understand this point here. I mean, when I think of that micro influencer movement, I think of the people who have 30,000 followers on Instagram being the more reliable source of truth because they know who their audience is. Why is this different from that?
Well, I'd say it's probably a little bigger than 30,000, but I basically say like, in a lot of cases, like that's pretty small. But
Yeah.
what I basically say is like the point is that you want people, like, think about it this way. You have your best friend in the world, right? You trust your best friend, right? For a whole bunch of reasons. You kind of share values with them, you share interests with them. If they lie to you, you're going to go over them and smack them on the head, right? If that makes sense. Like, there's like a relationship there that's durable in a lot of ways. I think the scale up of that into the 50,000, 100,000 follower communities. Candidly, you've never heard of 99% of these people because they're too small and too specific for you to know who they are, right? But if you're specifically into knitting, or if you're specifically into hunting in some certain forms, these are the people that you know and trust. Those are the people that are going to really succeed in a lot of ways, versus the people whose name you've heard of, but you have no reason to trust them really over someone else, and they have 50 million followers.
Right. Great. Well, Sam, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Sam Lessin, a general partner at Slow Ventures here on TITV.
Nice.
Okay. OpenAI has projected that 1/3 of the planet will be using ChatGPT by the start of the next decade. That is roughly triple its current 900 million weekly users. But where ChatGPT gets these new users matters because it could actually have an impact on where OpenAI's ambitious revenue targets end up playing out. Our OpenAI reporter Sri Muppidi wrote a great column on this topic and joins me now. Sri, welcome back to the show. It's great to see you.
Great to be here.
So start us off with the company's projections. You talked about they see 2.6 billion weekly active users in 2030. So 2.6 billion weekly active users. What kind of revenue does that translate to in terms of what they're expecting?
Totally. So the 2.6 billion weekly active users is in 2030. And in that year, OpenAI expected to generate roughly 200 billion in revenue, with about 46 billion of it coming from new products that monetize free users. And as we've reported before, a vast majority of ChatGPT's users are free users. And so this could be, for example, by generating revenue from advertising or e-commerce. And so that's why the total user base is so important, just because while 2.6 billion weekly active users is a large number, nearly a third of the population, it still is a vast majority of it free users. And so OpenAI needs to figure out a way to actually monetize these users.
Okay. Now, before we get to the next topic, I think it's staggering that you pointed out here that basically 25% of that 200 billion in revenue is coming from a product line that effectively really hasn't been rolled out yet. It's really, I mean, we've talked about shopping and advertising. I mean, this is the big question, right? And what does it even look like? And here they're saying, it's going to end up being 25% of our business. I want to talk also about the geography. So you made this point in the story in the column about how depending on where a user is located, it has traditionally had an impact on how much revenue it brings in for large tech companies. Talk a little bit about that, and then we'll talk about OpenAI specifically.
Totally. So we looked at a number of other digital ad companies. This includes, for example, Meta and Pinterest and Snap. And what we find disproportionately is that users from the US and Canada drive a disproportionate amount of revenue despite the small percentage of total users. So if we zoom in, for example, on Pinterest, users from US and Canada generated nearly 75% of Pinterest third quarter revenue in 2025, but they only accounted for less than a fifth of Pinterest 600 million monthly active users. And so this shows up in a metric called average revenue per user. And so what we
ARPU.
find,
ARPU.
Yes, exactly. So the ARPU for US and Canada users for Pinterest is $7.64 for that third quarter, while Europe was $1.31, and the rest of the world was just 21 cents. And that really just shows up sort of how important monetizing while expanding OpenAI's business is really important. It just shows up that like the US and Canada in particular, when you look at other companies like Meta, Pinterest, is important to actually be able to monetize these users.
Okay, so now if they want to get to 200 billion in revenue, and we know that it's harder to make money from customers outside of North America, really, where are the users for ChatGPT? Where are they located currently?
Yeah, so the top 5 markets for OpenAI's weekly active users today are US, India, Brazil, Japan, and France.
Okay, so that, and so I mean, where I'm going with this is, are they well positioned to, make this revenue target? Do you think, or what are some of the challenges you see them facing?
I think the big challenge that they'll face is just given that India and Brazil are in the top 2 markets, they're going to really help with that metric of driving weekly active users. But when you look at, for example, just like the 21 cents and Pinterest example, where the rest of the world, India and Brazil won't necessarily have the ARPUs as like the US and Canada that they have. And so we see this already with how OpenAI has launched a ChatGPT Go subscription model where it costs roughly $5 as compared to a $20 or $200 plan for example, users that are not in those like Go areas. You see that the ARPU for the rest of the world is going to be less than, for example, the users in the US. And so I think that this poses a challenge for OpenAI just because they have to be really smart in how they actually monetize these users and see if they can do that in a way that still helps them get to their metrics and goals that they want in the long run.
Right. Well, Shri, I want to thank you for coming on. It was an insightful column. That is Shri Muppidi, our OpenAI and Anthropic reporter here at The Information. Well, that does it for today's show. A reminder, we are on this stream Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I want to thank you for tuning in. We really do appreciate your viewership. I'm already excited for our next show tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Monday. Bye-bye for now.